Welcome back to the News from the Real World podcast. I'm Quinn.
I'm Jess.
I'm Eleanor.
I'm Jody.
Andrew. And this segment we're starting off with, isn't this your favorite movie? Or one of your favorite movies,
I'm not
Jess?
gonna lie, it actually is.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Take it away, Jess.
This is Princess Bride. They're coming out with a stage version. Disney teams with William Goldman on stage version of Princess Bride. It's a student pick off of HollywoodReporter.com by David Rooney. Basically, Disney is developing a stage version of The Princess Bride. We don't know if it's going to be a play or a musical or what's going to happen, but it is in the works.
How could it not be a musical?
Yeah.
But where would you put music in The Princess Bride? That's my question.
I mean, I don't know the movie well enough to say
Yeah,
for
it's
sure,
good.
but you can put music in anything. I mean, come on.
There's gonna be a song called "As You Wish."
Yeah.
There's gonna be a song.
I don't know.
There's going to be a song called Inconceivable.
What's
Yeah.
Andre the Giant song
Totally.
going to be? That's what I want to know. Who's going to play him? Because I am available.
Yeah, I haven't seen that movie in years.
Great movie.
I always forget that it's a story told to like the
Yeah, it's-
stick.
It's
I
Peter Falk and Fred Savage.
Right.
Yeah,
I always,
Granddad.
that's always the first thing that leaves my memory. Like I always forget that.
And that's actually one of our commenters brought up a good point about that. Simone says, oh gosh, where'd it go? I'm really curious to see how the show portrays the narration portion jumping to and from the old man and the boy to the fairy tale. So, like, are they going to have that narration part, or is it just going to be the story?
I'm sure
Oh,
they're
I
going to
can
have that because it's like a perfect frame for.
Yeah.
I can
Yeah,
see
it's
the
very
scenic element
theatrical.
already.
Yeah.
The bed spotlit and then, you know, opens
Story-
into the storybook fairy
The
tale.
storybook, the false proscenium.
Yeah. So many negative comments. Oh, it can't be done. It shouldn't be done. Blah blah blah.
I can't believe that this sparked that much interest. Like,
Yeah.
and I have to note that it was mostly the undergrads who wrote about it. Like, and that's kind of weird to me because this is a movie from when I was a kid.
Yeah,
like,
same
But
here.
it's
And
such an
Yeah.
iconic
We're
movie.
old.
But it's
I
cult-
had
it's
no
cult-
idea that
it's
it was
cult.
iconic.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I didn't realize that until
Yeah.
yesterday.
One of the interesting things about the article is that this has tried to be done before.
Yeah,
they
Adam
tried
Gettle.
to make it, in
Yeah.
2007, and it failed. They had
Because
financial
of
issues, and
some-
it never went through.
Until the limitless pockets of Disney theatrical.
Yeah.
Every week, Disney.
It was,
Every week.
it was interesting.
Disney owns
They
the
made a
world.
point that none of that material will be used in this version.
Yeah.
It made it sound like there was some weird
Yeah,
falling
there's some
out among
animosity,
the
yeah.
the
There had
creative.
to have been
the
some kind of
composer.
Yeah,
legal
Adam
discussion
Gettle.
because the score was almost done for that
Yeah.
production. So there had to have been some kind of legal, like, you will not use my material. Or,
Right. Maybe
Whatever, what
William
they
Goldman
call
didn't like it.
Our instincts might be wrong, Eleanor. They might not use that song called Inconceivable.
Oh no.
It is interesting to me that, like, you know, with a production company whose greatest success is Lion King, right?
Yep.
So that's obviously, at least to me, obviously a target market towards families and, you know, children, and families with children, right? This doesn't seem like that at all. Like
Yeah.
this movie, or this movie and this play would be much more targeted towards people our age or
Yeah.
people, you know, of the younger generation just below me. Which is interesting. I mean, is Disney really capable of courting that audience? I'm not sure.
Well, I
Generation
think,
Y.
I think it's going to turn into our generation taking our kids. I mean,
Yeah.
you said it yourself. Your generation's from when you were a child. I didn't see the movie until I was already a lot older. But I mean, a lot of your generation is already married, has their own family, that they want to share this thing from their childhood with their kids.
Yeah.
On that note, I feel like there's this trend these days. I know that certain theaters in Broadway are already on this and like doing reduced ticket rates and stuff like that to attract people of our age to spend money on tickets, you know, because we have this disposable income, you know, disposable.
Well, not us.
Not us,
Between
not
our
grad students at CMU,
Mountain loan debt.
but our friends who are consultants and doctors and lawyers and accountants.
Yeah. Non-artists. Yeah.
Right. So I think that maybe this is one of their ways of jumping on that bandwagon by targeting that audience.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, Jody, why don't you take it away? With,
Speaking of
a couple
content-
Jody picks coming up.
Speaking of content on Broadway, so there's this really great article called "Keeping the Creativity in the Mix" by Pia Catton from the Wall Street Journal, and it was basically about this really cool sort of fellowship or sort of stipend, this competition, I guess. And on Broadway now, there's this award given to young producers of $30,000, $10,000 as a stipend, and $20,000 as you can invest it back in a project, to kind of generate new content, like strictly new content, on Broadway. It can't come from, you know.
The role of the producer has changed a lot in the last
Yeah, I think
25 years.
yeah,
where it's
and what was-
less. It's just about writing the check, less
right, and I feel like that's the
creative-driven.
bad. I feel like
Yeah.
that's the bad rap, and that's what that producers have, and that's what this article is combating. So this contest is combating. You know, program is combating, and I think that's wonderful. And they were really talking about the creative role in what a producer does. And I feel like a lot of the comments that students made were along those lines. Oh, I didn't really know that much creativity went into it. And for me, the article was extremely relevant because this is one of my favorite articles last week. Because producing is what I want to be doing. And,
Right.
and in my school of thought, it's a producer is someone who has an idea and is the farmer who plants that seed and then nurtures it to grow and goes and hires the right people to make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's totally what this contest was
Yeah.
about. And I really want follow-up information. I want to know what the
Yeah.
prerequisites are, and I want to know what comes out of what this $20,000 goes to, what comes out of it, and what kind of scale they have to find for what kind of scale these productions are on, and
It's
stuff
been
like that.
successful too because one of the original fellowship winners he went on to produce Once. He was on
Yeah.
the producing team of that, and we should mention too Hal Prince, the legendary Broadway director,
Yeah.
has kind of shepherded this program.
Well, it's interesting what you say about the role of the creative producer and what that is, because that in England, where I've spent some time, that conversation is very advanced, and I think it's because they have a kind of more of a mixture between the commercial sector and
Right.
funded or
The
subsidized
nonprofit
theatre.
sector.
Right.
So they have a lot of bursaries for creative producers and a lot of that kind of stuff, and there's creative producers in independent companies and on the West End and all of that, and I just think, yeah, that's total. And I've done producing myself, and that's totally what it is. It's
Yeah.
not just about the money.
I mean, it's not about the money. It's about empowering people to do their jobs and filling in the gaps where there are gaps. You know, there's this joke in the independent film scene that a producer is also the peanut butter and jelly sandwich maker because for craft services, it's often what they end up doing. So on that note, I'm going to read Zoe's comment. She wrote, "A creative producer is like an editor. They are not one of the creators, so that they are not personally attached to the show. Oh, so they are not so that they are not personally attached to the show, but because they are being paid by the show and because they may have put money into it themselves, and they are invested in how well the show does economically." And I just think that that's really interesting. That comparing the creative producer to an editor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always thought of, when I think producer, I think of somebody who sits in an office and hears pitches, right? Some people come to them with ideas, and they have this sort of toss it over their shoulder into the wasteback thing. So, I don't see the
It's
money
like
in
that
this.
TV show Shark Tank, walk in
Right.
the big room in front of the panel of
Which I think
executives.
it's more of a Hollywood
Yeah.
Studio
stereotype.
exec.
Yeah. But
Well, moving on, Shakespeare. We got this
Shakespeare!
week's Shakespeare article about the productions from the Globe.
who is
So-
this guy?
What? It's not you talking about Shakespeare.
I tried to get this. She nabbed it first, but I'll have plenty to say. Don't worry.
So, speaking of content on Broadway, here's a wild idea for Shakespeare. Do it his way. This is a student pick by Jeff London. It's an NPR article. And this was basically about how the next show coming over from London to Broadway, it's by Shakespeare, this was a production of Twelfth Night.
Well, it's a dual production, Twelfth Night and Richard
III,
III, done in rep
Excuse me. Richard
from the
III.
Globe. Yeah. Mark Rylance.
All right, let her.
Makes it
let
easy to
her
rep when there's no
introduce
scenery.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's basically talking about how their concept is to do it exactly the way Shakespeare would have done it. It's all men performing it, very few scenic elements, the basic medieval costumes. And I think my favorite thing about this article was how they were talking about back in the day, no one went and saw a show. You went and heard a show. And that's why it was called rehearsal. Did you hear it?
Yeah.
And I thought that was an interesting perspective, I thought. Because now, what are we doing? A show is all about spectacle. Look at Nina Variations. It's all about the lights and the scenery
Yeah.
and the projections and how those things blend. And I mean, it's an interesting kind of progression that we've gone back to where we've started.
What does our resident feminist think of all-male Shakespeare productions?
I mean, I wouldn't want to see it all the time,
Yeah.
for sure, but I think in this case it's very interesting because it's Twelfth Night and it's a man playing a woman playing a man,
Yeah.
and
I think you can
that's
still-
really
You
interesting.
can still talk about feminism with an all-male cast. I mean,
Yeah.
the truth of the situations is still the truth of the situation. It doesn't matter who's behind the mask.
Everyone's saying Rylance's Olivia is amazing.
Yeah.
One of
Sure.
the best ever.
And I'm also very happy to see a man playing a woman and doing like a good job of it and not sending it
camping
up
it up.
and showing
Yeah.
that that can be done like in an interesting way.
Well, and I mean, who doesn't want to see really great literature performed by really great actors?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
if we could all just rely on amazing acting all the time, we probably wouldn't have jobs. Like, I wouldn't, right?
Yeah.
Not to say that all modern theater is bad acting. Of course, that's
Right.
not what I'm saying. There's just so much more to it than there used to be.
Yeah.
The thing I thought was really cool is how they talk about how these plays would have been done during the day because you didn't have
Mhm.
lighting,
Yeah.
basically, and so being able to see the audience as the performer is very much a piece of this play. Like the audience has lights on them. It's kind of like that article we read a couple weeks ago about how as the lights dimmed, the audience got more
Right.
distant.
yeah.
But this production is really
And-
about integrating.
Well, and they acknowledge that in the article.
Yeah.
They talk about how Shakespeare knew that these things were
Yeah.
happening, and
Yeah.
he embraced it in his text.
Right.
Yeah. And I would counter that it's not just it's oral because it's like about the imagination. So in that way it is very visual.
Sure.
For sure.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
it's like, I loved this quote that he said, so there's a general spirit of playing with an audience rather than for them or at them or to them because of
Totally
the role of
agree.
the imagination.
Yeah,
I
and the
think it's
asides make so
wonderful.
much more sense, I think. I mean, so much of Shakespeare is an aside, right? Like, it makes, to me, I would love to be sitting in the second row and have, some Olivia's aside directly
Right.
right at me. Like,
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
mean, just for that split second, it makes
Right.
the experience so much more,
alive.
What did the internet trolls think?
What do the internet trolls think?
I'm teasing.
I'm abridging a very long comment by Miss Camille. I'm tired of Shakespeare being reinvented in modern times and places, as most of us are. The argument often seems to be that audiences can't relate to events in the Middle Ages. And
Not related.
yeah, not related. If a play is good, it doesn't
enough.
need its setting to be completely changed for the sake of relevance, is basically what she's saying. And
Well,
I think that's...
I had put that in my notes, and I haven't said it till now. But it was interesting that most of the comments I read anyway were actually more about the reinvention of Shakespeare than what the article was actually talking about. It was sort of talking about the backlash to that sort of thing. The Shakespeare all set in the Civil War or like whatever.
Right.
That we do over and over and over again.
But I think so often when we reinvent Shakespeare, we're just changing the setting in quite an arbitrary fashion,
Absolutely.
right? And this
Often.
is not just about the setting.
I think this reminds us
is
that you
about
don't need to
style.
make this any more interesting. It's
Oh, right.
it's interesting already.
Works on its own.
Yeah, the
Good-
language stands for
good
itself.
Master actors in those roles.
Yeah.
Well, that concludes this segment of the News from the Real World podcast. Join us for segment 3.
Oh.